Call to order the January 6th, 2021 meeting of the James City County Planning Commission. And just for a brief moment before we get into the agenda, I'm sure everybody's been shocked and dismayed by the events that have taken place today. So I'd just like to call for a moment of silence for our country and for strength in the trying days ahead. Thank you all. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Null. Present.
Mr. Rose.
Present.
Mr. Rose represents the Roberts District. In accordance with the Planning Commission's adopted policy, Mr. Rose is participating remotely from his home this evening due to a medical condition that prevents physical attendance. Ms. Leverins.
Present.
Ms. Leverins is an at-large member and is this year's vice chair. In accordance with the Planning Commission's adopted policy, Ms. Leverins is also participating remotely from home this evening due to a medical condition that prevents physical attendance. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman represents the Berkeley District. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member. Mr. Kropp.
Here.
Mr. Kropp represents the Powhatan District and is this year's chair. I'm Paul Holt, Director of Community Development and Planning for the county, and sitting to my far left is Mr. Max Salavin, our Deputy County Attorney. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Next item on the agenda is the public comment period, and these are for topics not subject to a public hearing tonight. And so I will open the public comment period. Is there anyone who would care to speak? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment and then move to reports of the commission. Mr. Haldeman, the Development Review Committee.
Mr. Chairman, the Development Review Committee met last on October 21st, 2020. The meeting came to order at 4 p.m. with all members present. Mr. Alex Baruch, Acting Principal Planner, and Mr. Thomas Weissong, Senior Planner, represented the county. The Development Review Committee reviewed Conceptual Plan C-20-0079, Forest Heights Phase 3, for consistency with its master plan, and this item will be on the consent agenda for this evening. Mr. William Feltz of Land Tech and Mr. Doug Harbin represented the applicant. The currently proposed application for these 46 affordable townhouses includes several changes from what is shown on the adopted master plan, including changes to parking locations and counts, the location of several townhouse units, and the scale and size of stormwater management facilities. The total number of homes was unchanged. In aggregate, staff did not find the proposal consistent, and the applicant appealed their decision to the DRC for a master plan consistency determination. The applicant showed that moving the 4 homes within the plan was necessary to accommodate the BMP and to avoid a large, expensive, and potentially unsafe retaining wall at the back of the project. The applicant also stated that they would surround the BMP with a decorative fence and landscaping. The existing homes on the Forest Heights Road would therefore face landscaping instead of the 4 homes as originally planned. The committee unanimously found the proposal consistent with the master plan, with the condition that the applicant would work with staff to replace at least 50% of the lost 17 parking spaces. The meeting was adjourned at 4:54 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Haldeman. Any questions for Mr. Haldeman? All right. Mr. Polster, do you have a report for policy?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Policy Committee met at 4 p.m. on 10 December. The committee members present were Rich Kraft, Tim O'Connor, Rob Rose, and Frank Polster. Staff members present were Christy Parrish, Zoning Administrator, John Reisinger, Planner, Paxton Condon, Community Development Assistant, and Alex Baruch, Acting Principal Planner. Case number Ordinance 20-0017, consideration of amendments to the zoning ordinance to consider contractor offices and storages in plan unit development districts commercial. At the November 10th, 2020 meeting, the Board of Supervisors adopted an initiating resolution to consider the addition of contractor offices and storage as a use in the plan unit development commercial district. Before approval of the resolution, the board requested staff to evaluate the outdoor operation element of the user to ensure minimal visual impacts in the district. Ms. Parrish presented her evaluation and set of 3 options to the Policy Committee addressing the outdoor element of for their consideration. The Policy Committee did find consensus on option 3, but requested staff to come back with language that would address concerns of proximity to residential areas and roadways, landscape buffer options, and potential performance standards for the Policy Committee meeting in January 21. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Polster? All right, next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and consent agenda items are deemed to be non-controversial. However, a planning commissioner may pull any item for further discussion. There are 3 consent agenda items this evening. These are the Development Review Committee Action Item C-20-0079, Forest Heights Phase 3, minutes of the October 7th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning Commission, and minutes of the October 27th, 2020 joint work session with the Board of Supervisors. Does anyone care to pull an item, or may I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you all. We now move into the public hearing phase of our meeting, and the first public hearing is Z-19-0013/MP-19-0011, Colonial Heritage Deer Lake Rezoning and Master Plan Amendment. Before getting into the presentations, I'd like to ask if there are any disclosures from Planning Commission members.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Due to my ownership of property located at 6419 Isabella Drive, I have a personal interest in the case numbers Z-19-0013 and MP-19-0011. My personal interests are the same as other residents and property owners within the Colonial Heritage neighborhood and a mixed-use zoning district, all of whom are similarly affected by these cases. I am able to participate in the consideration of these cases fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you, Ms. Null. Anyone else with disclosures?
Chairman,
Yes,
I
Mr. Leader, I
had a
received
telephone conversation with the applicant's attorney.
Had a telephone conversation with Mr. Roque with the applicant.
I had a phone call conversation with Mr. Davis also.
And I
Also,
exchanged
Mr. Rowe
emails with Mr. Davis.
did send me an email, and I sent one back and said I'd be happy to meet him at the meeting.
Thank you all very much. At this point, we'll go into the staff presentation with... Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Leverins?
No, I said my piece, thank you.
Okay. I'll check the volume, Chris.
All righty. We'll now move to the staff presentation. Ms. Tori Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mr. Bright Davis of Hoffman and Knoll has submitted an application on behalf of Lennar to rezone approximately 220 acres from A1 with proffers in rural cluster SUP to mixed use with proffers. The rezoning request proposes 150 single-family age-restricted units, which would become part of the Colonial Heritage HOA. The area is currently located within the PSA and is designated low-density residential on the comprehensive plan. The 220 acres proposed to be rezoned is currently known as Deer Lake Estates and is approved as a specially permitted rural cluster consisting of 50 single-family lots. As currently approved, Deer Lake Estates is associated with Colonial Heritage, but would function as its own distinct neighborhood with its own HOA and a dedicated access point from Jolly Pond Road. In its current form, Deer Lake Estates is not age restricted and has no internal connections to Colonial Heritage property. Of the 220 acres to be rezoned, approximately 100 acres on the northern side of the property would be placed under conservation easement. The proposal also includes an 8-acre parcel to be dedicated to the Colonial Heritage HOA for recreational purposes. Access to the 150 units would be through the internal private road system, and there would be no permanent direct access to Jolly Pond Road. Associated amendments to the existing Colonial Heritage Master Plan are proposed as part of this rezoning request. The amendments will incorporate the Deer Lake Estates property into the Colonial Heritage Master Plan as a new land bay. Additionally, the amendments will bring the master plan into conformance with current ordinance requirements, which did not exist at the time of the previous approval in 2004. The overall caps of 2,000 residential units and 425,000 square feet of commercial building area remain the same. The applicant has also proposed to amend and restate the existing 2004 proffers such that they will apply to both existing Colonial Heritage as well as the proposed Deer Lake property. The applicant has also proffered new conditions to ensure additional traffic improvements along Richmond Road to mitigate impacts identified in the updated traffic study related to the commercial development, conveyance of the 8-acre parcel to the HOA for additional amenities, conveyance of the 100-acre conservation easement to the county, the overall maximum residential cap of 2,000 units, and assurances for the construction phasing plan as required in the mixed-use district ordinance. Staff also notes that because the original traffic study is over 5 years old, current policies required an updated traffic study as part of this application, which was submitted and reviewed by VDOT and a third-party traffic consultant. It was found that the residential units proposed for Deer Lake would not produce impacts that require additional mitigation on public right-of-ways. However, additional traffic improvements were recommended at the intersection entering the commercial land bay, which is Land Bay 6, from Richmond Road. This intersection is currently signalized and also serves as an entrance to Williamsburg Pottery. Items recommended for improvement include extension of the inbound merge lane entering Land Bay 6, temporary discontinued use of the westbound left turn lane on Richmond Road with reinstallation when warranted, an extension of the existing westbound turn lanes on Richmond Road if commercial development in Land Bay 6 exceeds a certain amount. The applicant has proposed proffers for traffic improvements at this intersection, which were reviewed by the traffic consultant and found them to adequately address these items. Because the overall 2,000 unit cap will not change and the 2004 proffers will continue to apply, staff finds that the proposed rezoning for 150 residential age-restricted units will not generate additional impacts requiring mitigation and is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Traffic impacts related to the commercial land bay for the updated traffic study have been adequately mitigated through the proposed proffers. Staff finds that the amendments to the master plan result in a more conforming development overall. With these considerations in mind, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the application and acceptance of the voluntary proffers to the Board of Supervisors. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll then move on to the public hearing, and I will open the public hearing and turn it over to Mr. Davis. Good evening, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'll call on Mr. Holt to bring up my presentation. I'm Greg Davis, attorney with the Kaufman & Knowles law firm, 4801 Courthouse Street here in James City County. It's a pleasure to be before you tonight. Project team before you this evening, members of the commission, is my client, Colonial Heritage, LLC. Project engineer is AES Consulting Engineers, which is ably represented tonight by Ryan Stevenson. Our traffic consultant worked with VDOT and the county's independent consultant was Dexter Williams of DRW Consultants, and of course my firm is counsel for the project. This application has a few moving pieces, but I thought I would try to hit just the highlights. This is a drawing or a rendering of the existing Colonial Heritage development. And you can see here in the yellow area, this is the current MU area. This is the Deer Lake Estates property, which is zoned A1 with a cluster overlay, which allows currently 50 large lot homes. And then in this area is the existing 282 acres of conservation area. To orient you, this is the Richmond Road frontage of the project where the main entrance is. Here is Centerville Road, where there is a second entrance to Colonial Heritage. And then the Jolly Pond Road frontage of Colonial Heritage lies in this orientation. Note for future reference tonight that there is an entrance to the Deer Lake Estates development, the A1 cluster, on Jolly Pond Road. Now the same orientation, but this shows the proposed rezoning and uses that are before the commission tonight. So again, in the yellow, you see the Colonial Heritage existing development, and then that is extended here to occupy approximately half of the former Deer Lake Estates property. The conservation area here remains unchanged. Notable is 100 acres of conservation area to be dedicated as a proffer accompanying this MU rezoning and master plan change. These acres are contiguous to the existing 282 and importantly provide contiguous tree canopy, which was identified in the Yarmouth Creek watershed study as critical to preservation of the Yarmouth Creek watershed, and this land is also adjacent to the Cranston's Mill Pond watershed. You heard Ms. Haynes mention earlier that the proffers include 8 acres of land to the Colonial Heritage Homeowners Association for future amenities. And you'll also note that in the proposal there is no entrance to Jolly Pond Road. Now, I qualify that by saying planned and arranged with staff, there is an emergency entrance there which would allow police, first responders, fire and rescue to access Colonial Heritage from Jolly Pond Road to reduce response times. And the plan is to have a construction entrance there to keep construction out of the internal road network. There are other advantages to the project. First, the benefits to the homeowners association are notable. In addition to the 8-acre amenities site, which I mentioned, my client proffers to convey Deer Lake itself to the Colonial Heritage Homeowners Association. This is beneficial because it's a nice amenity for the association, vistas, walking, etc., but also it is a water source for the Colonial Heritage golf course. The original proffers with Colonial Heritage required that no groundwater be used to irrigate the golf course, and so Deer Lake is critical for those purposes in the future. But perhaps most importantly, the additional 150 residents who would be a part of the Colonial Heritage Homeowners Association provide more dues to bear the cost of the Colonial Heritage amenities. This picture shows the 25,000 square foot clubhouse. The golf carts indicate that there's an 18-hole golf course here. There are aquatic centers. There are a great number of amenities, and there are expenses there, and the homeowners will benefit with having more dues payers and more folks to use and patronize the restaurant and the golf course to, again, help bear the expenses of those nice amenities. But there are other advantages. The Jolly Pond Road entrance, which I mentioned earlier, means less traffic on Jolly Pond Road. Traffic on Jolly Pond Road has increased 60% since 2004, according to our traffic engineer. So removing Colonial Heritage traffic from Jolly Pond is important. And secondly, it's a nice road, and it'll make it more scenic not to have an entrance there. In addition, by eliminating traffic off of Jolly Pond Road, there will be less traffic on Centerville Road. Centerville Road, particularly at the Jolly Pond intersection, receives a lot of comments from county residents, and this is maybe not empirical, but although this proposal increases the number of residences from 50 to 150, 150 residences are age restricted and generate 1/3 of the traffic. So our traffic consultant, and VDOT and the county's consultant agree, finds that there's no impact, or in fact maybe better traffic on Centerville as a result of the change to the 150 units. That having been said, we did receive comment letters from residents in Colonial Heritage, just a couple, but there was some sentiment that retaining a Jolly Pond Road entrance and exit to Colonial Heritage was attractive to them. I just wanted to make it clear to the Commission, if it's the will of the Commission that a Jolly Pond Road entrance and exit exist, the applicant is perfectly comfortable with you recommending approval, but including retention of the Jolly Pond Road entrance and exit. Ms. Haynes also pointed out that as a part of the proffers, we have improved the traffic flows on the 50-acre commercial site. This is across the street from the Pottery, where those acres are set aside for commercial use. I mentioned it before, and I'm just not going to duck this question in James City County or anywhere else in Virginia. This application involves more houses, 150 instead of 50. But they're age-restricted houses, which means no school impact children generated by these homes. 50 Deer Lake houses would be large lot homes, ideal for families. Age-restricted housing produces fewer residents per household. So if your concern might be population growth, that's ameliorated by the fact that these are not homes that have a number of children or number of generations living there. The fact of the matter is senior housing, age-restricted housing generates fewer residents per household. In addition, these 150 new residences would be subject to the extensive Colonial Heritage proffers. Those include cash for water infrastructure, extensive buffering of the surrounding roadways, and water use restrictions, which are quite detailed and which minimize such things as irrigation of lawns and plantings. These 150 active adults in Colonial Heritage would use the Colonial Heritage recreation amenities, golf, walking trails, clubhouse. So they are not going to put a burden on county recreation amenities. Further, these active adults are shoppers, diners, and volunteers. They make a positive fiscal impact on James City County. The fiscal impact calculations based on the county's submission requirements suggest that a positive fiscal impact from these homes alone would be $300,000 per year. Simply put, with no school children, the real estate tax, sales tax, personal property tax, meals tax generated by these 150 homes outweigh the county's cost of having these folks in as citizens. Homeowners Association welcomes these new homes. You've received, I believe, letters of support from the Homeowners Association to that effect. I mentioned the fact that there are no traffic impacts. And then a final, but I think a critical point is this. 150 Colonial Heritage homes have exactly the same environmental impact as the 50 large lots. Why is that? The 50 large lots would be more grass, more clearing, longer driveways, about 40 acres of clearing in total to accommodate those. We've had AES run the calculations for the much smaller lots that are preferred by Colonial Heritage buyers. They don't want a big lawn to take care of. They don't want a lot of bushes to trim. And they like smaller homes. So the market is driving Colonial Heritage to a smaller product, and so the land disturbance for the 150 homes will be about the same, 40 acres, an important environmental plus to this change. So, Mr. Chairman, having made those high-level points, I'd welcome questions from the Commission. I'd respectfully request that the Commission follow the recommendation of the staff and recommend this application to the Board of Supervisors for approval, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Questions for the applicant?
Since I live there, I don't have a huge problem with developing back there on Deer Lake. My huge problem is no other access road. I checked into Ford's Colony. They have 9 entrances and exits in their development, which is a little larger than ours. But just living up off of William Heath Boulevard, I was just thinking about it today. If something happened on William Heath Boulevard and that road was closed, Section 5, Section 6, Section 6.2 are stuck. And we see, I'm 2 miles from the front gate. That's a long way to go. And without another entrance for people coming in or even visitors coming in, they're going to go 3 to 4 miles just to get back to Deer Lake. I really have a problem with access. That's my issue. I don't have a problem with the houses. 8 acres is great to build another hopefully another workout area, maybe another pool because it's really crowded. But I'm a safety issue person, and I just don't feel safe there. I mean, if something happens at the corner of Colonial Heritage Boulevard and William Heath, we're all done up there. There's nowhere to go. And I have seen on Route 50 and on Route 15 and 50 and Route 15 and 55 in Northern Virginia, which you probably know, they have put in traffic circles. And I think that would mitigate all the extra traffic on Jolly Pond and Centerville. It looks to me like there's enough room to do that there.
Yes, ma'am, to
So those are my
respond to
thoughts.
that. Yes,
Pardon me?
ma'am. The applicant, as I mentioned earlier, is not opposed to a Jolly Pond Road entrance. Now, the entrance that will remain is a construction and emergency access easement. That'll be paved so that if, for example, a tree fell across the Centerville Road entrance and then someone had a medical emergency, the fire trucks or the ambulance could come in from Jolly Pond. If there were some catastrophe and the Centerville Road exit were closed on some ongoing basis, the entrance off Jolly Pond would be suitable for passenger vehicles, so that it could be an overflow entrance. But if it's the will of the commission that the Jolly Pond Road entrance remain, please recommend approval, but with a Jolly Pond Road entrance, and the applicant will be fine. That's why we're here tonight.
Jolly Pond entrance
those
with a key card.
Yes, ma'am. Now, on the other comment about the traffic circle, we looked at solutions for the traffic issue at Centerville, and our traffic engineer explained that traffic circles have become a very popular way of solving issues like that seen at Jolly Pond and Centerville, but the cost of that traffic circle is prohibitive. With 150 homes, it just wouldn't bear the cost.
Another question. On Jolly Pond Road, if you go back to the end, there's a dam there. The dam is out. Where's all the traffic coming from? I know there's traffic down there. There's a school, but I don't think it's all that bad. I waited almost 5 minutes tonight to get out the back gate at Colonial Heritage because of traffic on Centerville. So that has to be mitigated at some point. It's not just Colonial Heritage going out there and putting all that traffic on there. But if we had another way in and out of our development, it certainly would be nice. Plus, all those extra homes, your build out is another 860 homes, according to your numbers here.
To the 2,000 unit
1738.
max, right?
Yeah. No, I subtracted 1738. I subtracted 1188, which we have now.
Right, yes.
Okay? I came up with 550. That's a lot of homes to put a lot of traffic on William Heath Boulevard, Isaac Circle, the back gate. That's a lot of people, and and Ford's Colony is not that much bigger, and they have 9 to get out of there. So I'm really
We're all ears to that, Ms. Nolan,
Okay,
and your
okay.
firsthand experience, I'm sure, is helpful to your fellow commissioners in making the recommendation to us on that. Thank you, ma'am.
Other questions for the applicant? Alderman.
The potential build-out, or the final build-out for this, which I recall you saying was going to be sometime around 2026, is going to be fewer than 2,000.
We think so, Mr. Haldeman, yes. We're sticking with a cap of 2,000 units, and that is achievable. There is sufficient land and housing product to achieve 2,000 units, but the demand that Colonial Heritage is seeing now remains to be for a single-family product, smaller, even a villa product, which is smaller yet. Some folks, for example, enjoy Colonial Heritage, but perhaps lose a spouse and are looking to downsize within Colonial Heritage. That villa product is proving quite attractive. But so if my client stayed with its current single-family product throughout, you're right, the build-out would be less than 2,000, 1,748 or so.
Is there any chance he'd be, applicant would, to number 6,000? Maximum cap. Uncertain yet.
I've talked about that with my client, Mr. Haldeman, and the issue, of course, is that when a big corporation does calculations about spreading costs over a development, they make some assumptions about density. I'm being quite candid with you when I tell you we don't think we'll get to 2,000, but if asked to lower that number, I couldn't, and my clients who are here tonight couldn't simply do that at the dais tonight. It would be a bigger.
Anyone else?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Ms. Leverins?
Okay, yes, to follow on with Jack Haldeman's question, if this project does not go through, would you have a possibility of revising the master plan for the existing Colonial Heritage to use smaller villa-type properties in the existing master plan?
Yes, ma'am, we would, Ms. Leverins. We could adjust it. We probably would not get to the same total unit count by simply making the homes smaller. We would not achieve the unit count we would achieve with the Deer Lake annexed into Colonial Heritage.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question has to do with the 2015 application, because my understanding, well, this was as part of the 2035 comprehensive plan. Now, my understanding at that time is your question, the applicant was questioned specifically about whether incorporating this Deer Lake parcel into the primary service area could result in an increase in density or an additional rezoning. Now, what is it that's changed? Because at the time, I understand the applicant said, no, we do not plan to ask for a change in zoning or an increase in density, and yet that's exactly what you're asking for today.
Yes, ma'am, you're right. The 2015 change allowed my client to eliminate the central water system and septic systems as the utility serving Deer Lake when public water and sewer had been run to the project in connection with the school and the rest of Colonial Heritage. And the question was raised by Supervisor Hipple, I believe. I wasn't present at that hearing, but the response given by my client was at that time they did not have the intent of moving for rezoning and the application that you see before you. A couple of things happened. Primarily, the market for those large lot homes has not been strong. Even without the age restriction, that's been a difficult product to market in the area, and my client felt that it could offer some significant advantages to the county, 100 acres of additional conservation, better traffic, et cetera, and also find some advantage for itself with this change. That's really what drove the application tonight.
Okay, and is it also not true that if you did build out the original master plan to 2,000 units, you would have the also have an increase in the homeowner fees? So that saying that the addition of these 150 homes would increase the homeowner fees is actually not necessarily true.
Correct. If we built out the additional 2,000 without the annexation of Deer Lake, there would be additional homeowners and additional dues. As Mr. Haldeman pointed out, we're unlikely to achieve that, particularly without Deer Lake.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. O'Connor.
Just two quick questions, Mr. Davis. How are you this evening?
Good evening, Mr. O'Connor.
Just to follow on Ms. Leverins a little bit. So if this master plan amendment doesn't go through, your client will still intend to develop Deer Lake in the 50 single-family lots? Is that safe to say? I mean, it's my understanding
that it would be developed. Yes, sir. My client might develop it, or my client might sell it to be developed, but that's valuable land, 50 lots approved.
Great. And then can you or Mr. Stevenson, somebody talk a little bit, we received some comments about the adequacy of the connector road, the internal roads to Colonial Heritage. Can you just talk to that a little bit as to the width of the roads, the construction, and whether or not it can handle that internal traffic?
Yes, sir. When we got that comment from a resident on Isaac Circle, and I quickly engaged our traffic engineer to look at the impact that the development of Deer Lake would have on those existing Isaac Circle residents. I don't know whether Ms. Haynes shared with the Planning Commission an email that I circulated or not. I see a nod. Bottom line is that Isaac Circle is not an isolated outpost. It is a circle, and the northern half of it is largely now lotted, but the southern half would provide access to a couple hundred plus homes that are already on the drawing board and under construction. So that Isaac Circle area, I don't want the commission to have the idea that Isaac Circle residents thought there would be no more development and now there will be. That's not the case. With regard to folks accessing the new 150 lots in Deer Lake that we propose through Isaac Circle, the traffic engineer found that it's longer to go around Isaac Circle to get out to Colonial Heritage Boulevard and Centerville Road. It's longer than by proceeding along Lord Dunmore. The Lord Dunmore route is only 4,700 feet, and the route around Isaac Circle is 5,500 feet. So it's a longer drive to go around Isaac Circle, and it's also out of the way. So our conclusion was that the folks who are now on Isaac Circle really would not be impacted much by traffic from future development, including Deer Lake. Sir.
Because I can't see our remote participants, I want to make sure Dr. Rose did not have a question. Not to put you on the spot, Rob, but just checking in.
Yeah, I have two questions. Can you hear me okay? I want to go back to your point about the homeowner association dues. As one of your points, you suggested that this would bring in more dues to the homeowners association. Does that mean that's going to lower the dues for everybody else? Or is the current amount of dues not meeting the budget, or is the budget for operations going to go up?
Budget operation should not go up dramatically, Dr. Rose, because there are not significant additional amenities needed to accommodate these 150 lots. So the short answer is dues could go down because the additional dues coming in would not be offset by corresponding expenses.
And the other question I had, you had mentioned that this would lead to a positive fiscal impact on James City County. Is that an assumption that the people moving here would all be moving from outside the county to these locations?
No, sir. Rather that the residents of these houses would pay taxes that would more than offset the county services they require. And that's all based on county assumptions about what it costs to have a citizen here, fire, EMS, Parks and Rec, that sort of thing, as well as county assumptions about taxes.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, one question I have. I read a number of emails from residents concerning how Lennar conducted the informational meeting on this project. Several people commented that their microphones were muted. Understandably, it was a virtual meeting because of the pandemic situation. But could you address how many opportunities residents had to discuss the project with Lennar and whether or not they were prohibited from making comments because the microphones were muted?
Glad to, Mr. Kropp. May I call Wes Dollins to the dais?
Sure.
Mr. Dollins, come forward if you would, please. Dollins leads the efforts with
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. We started this process probably about 15 months ago. As part of that process, we had to go to the Development Review Committee. Once we started that process, there started to be a lot of discussions within the community. So in October of 2019, I wrote a pretty substantial letter and submitted it to the community through our HOA blast system. And we also used what's called neighbor to neighbor, which is an internal send out. That initial send, it brought about 8 responses. One had to do with egress off Centerville. One had to do with requesting a small park with a gazebo. One was a complaint that the message was sent out in neighbor to neighbor. Two were asking about the confirmation of a construction entrance, which we said we would vacate. The construction entrance came in off of Jolly Pond. It came down Isaac Circle, and we did vacate that construction entrance. One of the complaints was that they received word of mouth and not from my letter. One wrote about the size of the athletic center, and one other asked about expanding pickleball and tennis. So those.
How many meetings? Mike's mute. I think that's.
Sorry. Okay. After that letter was sent, we had 5 separate board meetings. At those board meetings, we have a developer comment period where we tell the community what we have going on. One of those did occur in person, January the 23rd of 2020. As far as mics being muted, we do have an open comment section for the community during our meetings. Mics are open for that. We ask for letters ahead of time. If people raise their hands, we answer. During the meeting portion, we do have it muted. So it's, we sent out the same letter again on the 23rd of December. I've received 0 responses.
Thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Haldeman.
Clarification. What's your role again? Do you represent the Homeowners Association or Lennar or?
I am with Lennar Homes.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Leverance.
If I could ask a follow-up question, following up on Ms. Knowles and Dr. Rose's comments about the Homeowners Association dues. Also with a comparison of Ford's Colony, which in fact has 2,500 units, which is larger than this. But Ford's Colony has multiple recreation areas, and they were part of the master plan, as I understand it. So is it true that if there is development on the 8-acre parcel, if this application is approved, that would be a financial burden on the homeowner association, which could result in an increase in dues for the residents?
Question being, we wanted to make sure as part of this application that we set aside property that if there was a need in the future for additional amenities or the HOA wanted to add those amenities, they could. Whether or not it would incur an additional cost to the homeowners through their homeowners dues, I can't sit here and answer that question, but I think is financially responsible individuals that work at the HOA and deal with the budgets, that those are things that we don't want to increase to be able to do other things within the community.
Okay, but that would be the financial responsibility of the homeowners association to do any improvements to those 8 acres.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you to the applicant. We're not going to use speaker cards this evening because of safety precautions. And so what I'd ask is for any individuals who would like to address this, you can queue up along the rail, keeping about 6 feet apart if you would like, and just take your turn. The comment period is limited to 5 minutes. And will we have the lights, Mr. Holt? Yep. Okay, and so the lights on the podium there will count down for you. So if there are any members of the public who would like to address this case, please come forward. And state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and James City County staff and administration. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Jesse Young. I'm a Vice President for Virginia Health Services, which owns property at 6799 Richmond Road, which is adjacent to the remaining commercial Colonial Heritage frontage. It includes the entrance road that's referenced in some of the application. We currently have preliminary site plan approval for our skilled nursing and assisted living project and are looking forward to operating in James City County. We're also looking forward to continuing our exemplary relationship with Colonial Heritage Management and the residents that has developed over the past several years as we completed our acquisition of the property. If approved, our efforts to coordinate with Colonial Heritage will certainly continue to allow whatever entrance changes required on the remaining commercial area for both their parcel and ours. In our experience, we would expect this site to be similar as well. For the commercial side of it, the seniors would generate very minimal traffic generation, and we do not anticipate any issues with the addition of this. Our experience with Colonial Heritage and the local Lennar Group has been first class in all aspects, and we encourage you to consider strongly their application. We wish them well. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Witt, and I live at 6935 Chancery Lane in Colonial Heritage. I've been a resident there for 7 years, and we love the community. We love the Williamsburg area. I and many of my neighbors and friends are all for adding Deer Lake Estates to Colonial Heritage. We see advantages to it in allowing to have us additional recreation facilities. The additional homes, that would be great to have. We love all our neighbors and have a great community there. The one issue Ms. Snow brought up, the access is a problem we're a little concerned about, but we do believe that that can be dealt with. I recommend that that the county allow us to do this, to give us the additional walking trails we need. That 8 acres would allow us to put up additional recreation facilities. The idea of Deer Lake there where we could walk around it and have some nice recreation areas. Plus, that lake we use to water our golf course. Our golf course is a beautiful part of our community. It is used not only by our residents, but from people from all over. It's a nice amenity to have here. And I would like the council to really consider approving this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Colonial Heritage residents living at 6815 Blakemore Terrace. And I'm proud to say I've lived there for almost 10 years. It's a great place. Lennar has been a very responsible developer, attentive to our community needs, and they've always had our best interest. And so we currently have approval on the property and could execute that plan, but this application provides so much more. It's a fabulous and fun community, and it would make it even better. So the impact on the Yarmouth watershed, protect it for what we're doing, and Lennar is also offering the 8 acres to the HOA, that's very generous and just envelopes everything. I hope that you consider this, and thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Would anybody else care to address this case? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn to my colleagues for discussion and a motion. In a discussion, it probably would be helpful to address whether anybody would be in favor of keeping the Jolly Pond Road entrance or evaluating the application as stated in our packet. Holster.
I do recall when we met 15 months ago at the DRC and went through your conceptual plan. And at the time, I was really concerned with the safety issue and that the problem that I was having with it is that the levels of service for both the fire, emergency management, and police is 6 minutes to the gate. It doesn't talk about the 2 or 3 miles that you have to negotiate or the side of the roads, how they curve in and out and how you get to it. So I was really pleased to see that you did have the emergency entrance there. I'm not quite sure how that works. I'm sure it's not the first time we have an emergency gate in any of our units, but I'm sure there's not going to be anybody fumbling for a key to be able to open it up. And as he pointed out, is that if there is some kind of a problem inside there, it is an outlet and exit. So I was supportive of of the plan for that one reason. The idea that we were going to put aside more land into a conservation easement, especially around that lake, and correctly pointed out on the Yarmouth, especially with the development that has occurred within Colonial Heritage, that at least it was an attempt to make sure that the downstream areas were protected, not only with the trees and all the rest of it, but the watershed on that. So I was supportive of that. I think the only thing that bothered me that I think got answered was that the terrain and the topography of what we're talking about has very, very steep slopes. And so the question was that the suitability of building a footprint of a house on there. And what we were told is that from an engineering point of view, that before they in fact decide that, they go in and do some soil tests to make sure the slippage and all the rest of it. And then, of course, I've looked at the stormwater department comments to it, and of course, that still has to go through the directorate if this thing gets approved. So there are ways for us to make sure that the adequacy of the siting of the facilities as well as the stormwater, given all those steep slopes. Not mentioned in here is that we have a problem with a endangered species, and there is land set aside to protect that area, which also adds to the 8 acres plus the other 100 acres that you have up there. So at least I like the design and the compactness of it. And I thought that the fact that the Deer Lake area was going to be underneath a conservation easement opened it up to everybody else, and you didn't spoil the view sheds from those residents that live up there. So I thought there was some real thought that went into the smaller lots. I think what really kind of sold me on the thing was it still stays within the same footprint of the 2,000. And then when you look at the financial assessment of it, it's still a plus, as you pointed out, at 300,000. So there were a lot of positive things that I thought were true about this, and I intend to support it the way it is.
Anyone else? Ms. Knoll?
I would happily support it if I knew that there was another exit from that community out onto Jolly Pond. I really believe it's a safety issue when you've got 2,000 houses and one road in and one road out. I mean, sorry, I just think it's crazy. I mean, when we have another development that has 9 of them right down the road.
Dr. Rose, did you have your hand up?
Actually, I had a question for Frank. Can you clarify your point about the endangered species?
It's a paddock begonia. It's a paddock begonia that they found in their search. And so what they were required to do is isolate an area around that plant for it. And it's on their map, as a matter of fact, for that area. If you blow it up, it's down on by the Jolly Pond Road side of it. You'll see kind of an ellipse type of thing around that. But they have to do that as well as they went and saw if there was any other historical pieces, and they found nothing else except for that endangered plant.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Could I ask Ms. Knoll a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are you looking just for an exit onto Jolly Pond or an entrance and an exit?
Entrance and an exit for people that live there, not for visitors, not for, I guess you'd have to have, my understanding is like 5-6 years ago that the construction entrance on Jolly Pond, had a key card for contractors. And then that went by the wayside, and that was opened up so everybody was coming through there, plus cars, plus your GPS, if you come to visit me, will tell you to come through Jolly Pond Road, which you can't do because they closed it. I just think another way in and way out would be, safety-wise, would be the best thing to do.
That answer?
She had said exit. I just wanted to see if she was looking for just a way out or in.
Well, it'd be easy. It would be nice to come in that way, but at least it would be very good to go out that way. In emergency, whatever. Hard would be.
Any other comments? Ms. Leverance? Anyone else? Or
yes, I did have. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I do have serious concerns about this, mostly from the standpoint of my comment that in 2015, they said they did not have any plans to increase the density or rezone. I just don't see a compelling reason for the county to approve this. I like the idea of the conservation easement. I don't like the idea of the increased number of units. I do think that without this, Colonial Heritage might have fewer overall developments. With the increase, certainly with the increase of 150, I don't like the added impact on Centerville Road or Richmond Road. I'm not crazy about the additional burden on the homeowners. If any improvements are made to the recreation areas, that could very well increase the homeowner dues. So overall, I'm not inclined to support this. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of consistency with our comprehensive plan, the surrounding zoning, and weighing the trade-offs with the 150 units versus the 50 larger ones. And a couple compelling points for me was the fact that the land disturbance with this current proposal is the same as with the 50 large lot houses. The additional acreage going into a conservation easement is also, I think, very beneficial. And so I'm inclined to support the application. I could support either with the Jolly Pond gate being a usable entrance or with it just being for emergency use. I don't have a preference. I could support either one. So that said, are there any other comments or a motion, Mr. O'Connor?
Just real quick, I personally am not a fan of adding an entrance to Jolly Pond. I thought that was actually one of the benefits for me. I travel Jolly Pond quite a bit, but recognize too that Colonial Heritage, the construction gate that exists now, that's not far down Jolly Pond, so I don't see that there would be a significant that would be a benefit to the homeowners association and the residents that live there. I'm not opposed to it. I do feel very strongly that our job is not to get involved in the internal workings of a homeowners association. That's a separate corporation and a separate membership, and it's not, the impact on dues is not something that should fall to us. And in this case, though, I do think one of the big benefits that we really didn't talk about is that the addition of 8 acres of recreation space for Colonial Heritage would benefit those folks who live in the back of the neighborhood, because just as it's 2 miles to the front entrance, 2 or 3 miles to the front entrance.
2 miles to the front gate from my house.
It's that far to get to a recreation facility. So, I know the operation of Colonial Heritage quite well from a former job that I had, and I know that the association was looking at adding amenities. So if this gives them a place to do it, it's not an additional burden to the association. But again, I don't think we should get into those internal discussions. And I do think it's really important too. We had some comments from folks that suggested that somehow there wasn't public input in the process. And I just would like to remind people that this is the public input. So again, this is the opportunity for our citizens to come in and speak to the talk about merits or non-merits of the case. So I do think that's just a really important point to clarify. But at the end of the day, when I look at this and understanding that this will develop regardless of 150 units or 50 units, understanding that right now in James City County, we have several communities of 3-acre lots that are approved and not under construction, or have been under construction for quite a long time and are not moving. I don't think it's in the best interest to continue down that path for for the county when we have the ability to have a development that has such less of an impact on the environment, and we have the ability to add another 100 acres to a conservation easement. So I think at the end of the day, the public impacts, the environmental impacts far outweigh the original Deer Lake plan, and I'm willing to support this application with the addition of the entrance. I understand, Mr. Davis, your client would be willing to add that to the proffers. Is that correct? So that said, I'm willing to make the motion, or I would like to make the motion that we approve Z19-0013 and Master Plan -19-0011 with the amended proffer for the additional entrance in Valley Pond Road.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Mr. Holt?
Fair enough. Okay.
Okay.
I'll amend it to that.
No, I agree with you, Paul. I think with Mr. Davis's assertion to you all earlier that they would be willing to amend the proffers, if he wants to simply state that the applicant is willing to amend the proffers to include an ingress-egress onto Jolly Pond Road, the recommendation could be based on that,
Okay.
on relying on that.
Mr. Davis, go ahead.
Chairman, yes, I would confirm that my client, the applicant, would amend the proffers based on a Planning Commission recommendation that would include an entrance and exit on Jolly Pond Road.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We all right now, Mr. Holt?
And again, for clarification, Mr. O'Connor, that's your motion?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
As long as you got it, I'm good.
We got it. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
No.
And Mr. Crop?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll just wait a second while the members here for this current case depart, and thank you all for attending. Everybody is welcome to stay as long as they'd like. We have another case coming up in front of us. All right. And are the representatives for this, for the Powhatan Terrace proffer amendment here in the room? Okay. All right. In that case, the next case is Z-20-0005, Powhatan Terrace proffer amendment. Good evening again, Ms. Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Ms. Brandy Weiler of Housing Partnerships has submitted a request to amend the adopted proffers for Powhatan Terrace, located at 1676 Jamestown Road. Powhatan Terrace was originally approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2008 as a cluster development consisting of 36 townhomes. At that time, all units were intended to be offered for sale at market price. A proffer amendment was approved in 2017 to allow the rental of units, and another proffer amendment was approved in 2019 to allow for inclusion in the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC program. The applicant is currently proposing to amend the following proffers. Numbers 2, 8, and 15 to clarify property maintenance obligations and responsibilities of the property owner while in a rental situation, in lieu of or prior to the creation of an owners association. These items relate to maintenance and funding of stormwater facilities, playgrounds, parking and roads, as well as implementation of nutrient management plans. Number 4, to reflect the cash proffer reduction incentive as specified in the Housing Opportunities Policy, which allows for reduced expectation of cash proffers for units targeted at affordable and workforce housing. Specifically, units targeted to households needing 30 to 60% AMI are eligible for a cash profit reduction of 100% per unit. These reductions apply to contributions associated with impacts to schools, water, sewer, and other capital improvements. Staff notes that the cash proffer for off-site stream restoration remains, as this is not covered under the HOP incentive. Number 13, to change the green building standard from Earthcraft to the Energy Star program. Per the applicant, the currently proffered Earthcraft certification has become obsolete in Virginia, and so they are now proposing to achieve a green building standard through the Energy Star multifamily new construction program. Number 17, to clarify and enhance requirements for future soil monitoring and mitigation related to gas contamination resulting from underground storage tanks which previously existed on site. And finally, number 19, to reflect that all units will be offered for rent at the 30 to 60% AMI range for a period of at least 30 years in compliance with the LIHTC program and as specified in HOP for cash proffer reduction eligibility. For proffers related to property maintenance and reserve funding for items like stormwater facilities, roads, and similar, staff finds that the proposed amendments better clarify obligations and responsibilities of the property owner while under a rental situation and still maintains the current requirements for a future owners association should that ever occur. For proffers related to HOP and cash contributions, staff finds that the proposed language better clarifies adherence to the HOP policy and confirms eligibility for cash proffer reductions. For the green building standard, staff finds that the Energy Star program is an acceptable alternative to the Earthcraft program and better clarifies triggers for submitting program specifications and final certification. For the proffer addressing the removal of the underground storage tanks, new language has been added to require compliance with conditions and recommendations specified by DEQ and a third-party environmental report. Staff finds that the new language provides more specificity and strengthens enforcement for future monitoring and mitigation of the site as it develops. With these considerations in mind, staff finds the proposal to be compatible with surrounding development and consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application and acceptance of the amended proffers to the Board of Supervisors. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. And before we go to questions for staff, I did neglect to ask if there were any disclosures in this case. I did speak with a member of the Housing Partnerships Board just to get some clarification on the application, but that was the extent of it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also had a conversation with Ms. Workman.
Okay. Thank you.
I beg your pardon, I had an email exchange with Ms. Wordman. I'd forgotten about that.
All right. At this point, any questions for staff? Ms. Leverins, Dr. Rose, no questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I will open the public hearing. And while certainly not required, if the applicant would like to address the issue, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jenny Wortman. I'm a member of the Board of Housing Partnerships, the developer of Powhatan Terrace, and I live here in James City County at 112 Southern Hills. With me this evening are the Executive Director, Brandy Weiler, and two additional board members, Andy Frank and Steve Romeo. My comments will be very brief, primarily limited to a short background summary. Powhatan Terrace was conceived originally as a complex of 36 individually owned townhouses on subdivided lots developed by a private developer and sold primarily at market rates. That concept changed markedly in 2016 when the owner of the property offered Housing Partnerships the opportunity to acquire it for the purpose of developing affordable rental housing. That resulted in Housing Partnerships first coming to the Commission in 2017 seeking to amend Condition 1 of the original proffers to allow rental units. We then returned in 2019 to change Condition 19 to allow price restrictions on the rental units. This was needed in order to get favorable reception of our application for low-income housing tax credits, which are limited only to rental housing construction and development. And I'm happy to report that our LIHTC application was approved in late 2019. So today, we're coming to you primarily to seek relief from the original cash proffers itemized in Condition 4, as permitted by the Housing Opportunities Policy. The task of putting together our financing is currently underway and will be eased considerably if we are able to eliminate what would be more than $250,000 in outlays that would be required under Condition 4. The remainder of the amendments we're asking you to approve were made in order to have the proffers more accurately reflect the nature of the Powhatan Terrace project as it will be developed under LIHTC restrictions. That is, a fully affordable rental complex operated and managed by housing partnerships, with all of the units restricted to persons with incomes at or below 60% of the area median income for a period of at least 30 years. Thank you again for your consideration, and my colleagues and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Wortman. Questions for the applicant? Alderman.
Hi, Ms. Wortman. I voted to recommend approval of this in 2017 and in 2019, and I plan to do so. I have a question. Out of curiosity, when you applied in 2019 for the low-income housing qualification, cash proffers were in place. I didn't developer application at that time to cash proffers.
I'm happy that I wasn't a board member at that time, so I don't know how to answer that question, but I will ask either Andy or Steve to answer.
If you please give your name and address for the record.
I'm Steve Romeo. My residence is 115 Tides Run, Yorktown. I've been a board member for 21 years. During our case, to answer your question, sir, housing was maybe in its last time approached the board. So housing opportunity policy coming into fruition more readily available for us to be able to a salient case board.
That's tonight, but you didn't make that application in 2019 when
Housing opportunity policy wasn't in place in that last application.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. In that case, then, we will open the floor to any members of the public who would like to comment on this case. A reminder, the speaking time is 5 minutes, and there are lights on the dais, or on the podium, that will count down for you. Anyone? Seeing and hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing and turn it to the commission for discussion or a motion. Mr. Polster.
I was absolutely thrilled to see the 30 to 60% AMI change. It really is in step with what the Housing Task Force, the fact that you've done really needed rental at rate. I intend to support.
Dr. Rose, did you have a comment?
No, I mean, I intend to support this as well. I would note that the audio is cutting in and out for us. I'm only getting part of that conversation.
But I'm missing some things.
I'm sorry, Ms. Leverance, what was that?
To support what Dr. Rose said, the audio is cutting in and out periodically. It's hard to follow sometimes.
Okay.
Commission members with our I was going to say telework, but with our other two commission members participating remotely, if you can just sort of lean into your microphones for me, we'll make sure all that gets picked up and sent out. So,
okay.
Broadcast out. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there are no other comments, may I have a motion? Ms. Knoll.
I move that we approve a motion, let's see, number JCC-Z-20-0005.
And if I could just add an acceptance of the amended proffers?
Amended proffers, yes.
Good, thank you. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll?
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. Rose.
An enthusiastic aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Ms. Leverance.
Aye.
And Mr. Kropp.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Good, thank you. Next case is SUP 20-0018.18, and that's 8251 Richmond Road, Hertzler and George Landscaping. Good evening, Mr. Leininger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Mr. Ryan Stevenson of AES has applied on behalf of Mr. Hertzler for a special use permit for a contractor's office and storage yard at a property located at 8251 Richmond Road. The property is zoned A1 General Agriculture, designated General Industry on the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map, and located inside the primary service area. The proposed contractor's office and storage yard would utilize 4.97 of the 29.72 acres of the parcel. This proposal would convert the existing structures on site into office space and then add additional parking. Behind the existing structures, the proposal includes a gravel laydown area, storage yard, stockpile storage area, as well as a maintenance building. Previously, the property was used for office space for Life Point Christian Church. Conditions have been included to reduce the impacts on the adjacent residential properties. These conditions include limitations on light pole heights, widened landscape buffers, and increased evergreen requirements to screen the facility. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with the surrounding development, consistent with the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. Staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leininger. And before opening questions to staff, are there any disclosures from planning commissioners in this case?
This is Robert Rose. I do have one. I wanted to disclose that I do sit on a board of the Historic Virginia Land Conservancy with Joe Hurst. I don't expect that would lead me to make or prevent me from making a non-biased decision.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rose. Anyone else?
Let's have a question.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, okay, we're now move to the question for staff. Go ahead.
Do you have a
Ms.
back entrance on here? I can't see if there's a, on
That-
the road to the left. I don't know the name of
That
it.
is the CSX Railroad. So there is no rear entrance.
It's the railroad? Oh,
Railroad.
okay. It's just, so you're not impacting any of those residentials behind you then, if the railroad's there, right? Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. Could you bring up the adjusted master plan that you showed us? And could you zoom into the area where the storage is?
For the material storage?
Yeah, that was the new addition, right?
Yep, in the upper left corner there.
Right. And what I'm interested in is, were there any concerns about the stormwater for the change in this master plan? Because this land drains, it's down through that area. and it drains into the lake with the CSX Railroad as a barriers. Did they have any comments about that?
I can defer to the applicant. It will depend on how they grade the site, but can we defer?
Why don't we go ahead and finish the staff questions, and then we'll have the applicant come up, and we can ask questions, a series of questions if need be. So we'll just.
Stormwater guys didn't comment on this?
They had not had a chance to review this version of it.
All right.
It would still need to meet site plan requirements.
I think even prior to the addition of the storage bins, there was proposed to be some gravel laydown area in that corner of the site.
There was originally gravel laydown area. Now they've labeled it as material storage, stockpile storage.
I understand, but the way that thing was constructed in the description you have there, they're concrete or barriers on either side, so there's a drainage issue. It still has to go somewhere and it's going to collect. It's where that is. So if the applicant can address that, that's fine, but I'm trying to find out if the stormwater guys are aware of this. Late addition to.
I'm not mistaken, I think the Stormwater Division said there wasn't anything out of the ordinary that they identified that would not otherwise be taken care of at site plan stage. Is that correct?
Other questions for staff before we call the applicant up? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to confirm, and the applicant can address it too, I guess, but when this gets to the site plan stage, they'll take into consideration that elevation change from the proposed roadway down to the bycast products place, because that's a terrible drop in a narrow space there. So
Yeah, I can let the applicant elaborate more, but it is intended that structures will be added to prevent additional flow onto the bycast.
Thanks.
Other questions for staff? Thanks, Mr. Leininger. If the applicant can come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Krupp, did you want to open the public hearing as part of that, or?
I will open the public hearing. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the commission, it's an honor to be here tonight. My name is Joe Hertzler. I am the owner of Hertzler and George Landscaping, and I live at 605 College Terrace in the city of Williamsburg. I've run Hertzler and George now for about 30 years, and the vast majority of that time we've been in the city of Williamsburg. I live in the city, been on the planning commission, I've been architectural review board, I've been very much a part of the city, and have very much enjoyed having my business in the city also. I love my 6-minute, 14-second commute. Literally, that's what it is, to back and forth to the office. But we've just run out of space. It's just not the room that we need as the business has grown, and we've just run out of space. So about a couple years ago, we started looking for property, and sometime last year, we came across this property. So as you know, the questions are already starting to stack up. This is a challenging property. It's got a lot of slope to it. It's got, you're not seeing it here, but you guys probably are aware already, quite a bit of RPA on it. The back of it backs up to the railroad. There's about 30% of the property is RPA. So it's a challenging property. I'm up to the challenge. I very much enjoy that sort of thing. But we've got a good bit of work to do on this yet. What we're doing right now is I'm working on this SUP so that we can acquire the property and get the business relocated there. Ideally, I would be coming before you with to rezone, but at this point, just because of the way the contract is written, we're just getting an SUP, and then I hope to come back at some point in the fairly near future to actually request to rezone this to industrial. But for right now, the idea is just to get the front of it operational, get our operation moved there. Interestingly enough, BICAS, will be our next door neighbor, has been our next door neighbor for about 20 years, where we were in the city of Williamsburg. So it's kind of coincidental that we end up back together here. Get here, get our operation set up, get it working, and then at some point, circle back around when we have a better idea of what to do with the rest of the property, how to expand our operation into it, perhaps do something else with it. But at this point, just getting the special use permit for the front half of it. We've got quite a bit of site plan work to do. You guys are already alluding to all the grading and drainage that are going to be an issue. Mr. Polster, your question about the storage area in the back. Clearly, we're in my business in landscaping. We deal with the after effects of bad grading decisions all the time, and it's certainly something that I don't want to see water collecting. I don't want to see runoff, and we certainly will address it. And in fact, Ryan Stevenson with AES, who's here tonight, could absolutely address some of this, maybe even in more detail than I can. We certainly will make sure that area drains into the BMP. BICAST, we'll collect whatever needs to be done and move it back to the BMP. Again, I plan to be a good neighbor. I think that we'll be a good asset to that part of the county. I think this will be a great location for our business, and I look forward to becoming involved with James City County in this way, sort of deepening my involvement with the county. I hope you guys can approve this and move it forward to Board of Supervisors, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions and do what we need to do to address some things.
Thanks, Mr. Hertzler. First of all, Mr. Polster, was your question answered?
No, maybe the AES guy can come up and try to address it.
Stevenson?
It's the slope of that piece there. I mean, it's, it's a big drop.
Yeah, Ryan Stevenson with AES Consulting Engineers, 5248. We've looked at it preliminarily, and we've definitely make sure up and provided to the Water Division.
Oh, good.
Talk to them about the fact that we will pick up every bit of impervious that we're showing, even in the areas of leveling off of hills and filling in of work, earth moving on the project, and storm structures placed to pick up everything and piped to the BMP.
And that's what was unclear to me, is where that piping was going to be from this drawing.
Yeah, there will be piping at the left side of it and pipe down towards the BMP.
Okay.
While you're there, Mr. Stevenson, Mr. O'Connor, was your question answered?
Yeah, I was just confirming that they're going to capture from the roadway to get it back to the BMP, so.
Any other questions for the applicants?
I just have one for Mr. Hertzler, if we could, so. Good evening, Mr. Hertzler, how are you tonight? Just a quick question. My editorial comment is I'm not a big fan of putting limitations on business, and I see that one of the conditions in here is limiting retail sales of stone and mulch and things like that. Is that, I don't want to get into your business model, but I mean, is that something that you're agreeable to? I don't know if that's something in the future you might be looking at doing, because in Toano we've got stone and mulch and all those other things for retail sale, and I appreciate the investment that you're going to make into this, and I'm not favorable to putting that limitation in, but that's me.
So, again, I've been running the business about 30 years and have not done $1 of retail sales. It's just not, it's a completely different animal, and it's not a business model I've cared to tackle, okay? Would we do it in the future? I mean, the beauty of this location and the road frontage that it offers is that, you know, it's going to open up a world of opportunities that, you know, have not existed so far, okay? So, you know, as far as putting that condition in there, I didn't fight against it. In fact, I probably am the one who suggested it, again, because we've never tried to get into the retail operation. If we were to take it out, you know, that could be good. You know, again, I'm with you in that the less constraints on a business, the better, so long as it doesn't impact negatively. I think probably the staff's big issue with trying to do retail is, you know, if you did retail here, it just would change the nature of the, you know, traffic in and out and all that. And you know, we're not building the infrastructure to accommodate that sort of thing, okay? So, you know, that's why we thought, well, let's just leave it out of the picture right now. If, you know, year, 2 years, 5 years circles around and we find that we do in fact want to do retail from here, you know, maybe at that time we come back with a revised site plan, or if, you know, and deal with those types of issues. So I appreciate that consideration, I really do. But at this point, I mean, I'm not opposed to that condition.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And Dr. Rose, Ms. Leverance, nothing from?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. You had mentioned that you intend to come back at a later date to ask for a change in zoning. Is that a risk, a concern in terms of a risk that you're taking on in terms of moving a business to a location and then expecting a change in zoning in the future? And what happens if that change does not get approved?
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense that there's certainly some risk there. I can run my operation under this special use permit. Okay, I could run my operation probably for the next 10, 15, 20 years under this special use permit. There's no reason that I would need to change anything. Now, obviously, there's quite a bit of land back there that we will want to take advantage of in some way. But obviously that would be, you know, we'll circle back around. So, but even if the property stayed as A1, where it currently is, with a special use permit, you know, and we extended that type of scenario through the entire property, I'd be okay with it. Okay, I think industrial makes more sense given the nature of that property, given the comprehensive plan that the county has in place. So I think, you know, M1 makes more sense in that way. But if, you know, when we come back around and we ask for that, if it's denied, I can live with it. So it's a risk I'm willing to take. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else for the applicant? Thanks, Mr. Hertzler.
Thank you again.
Okay. Any members of the audience that would care to address this case, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. And again, you have a maximum of 5 minutes.
My name is Dorothy Prowant, Prowant for Prowant. And my address is 8277 Richmond Road, which is the next door on this site. So my question, I've never done anything like this, so I'm a little bit nervous. What is the impact to us? Because we're on well water, and in our septic system, you're going to have all this stuff behind us, the traffic behind us, the noise. You know, it's residential. I know that on both sides of it's sort of coming in, because if you look on that other map that you had, there's like 3 houses and then another business, and then this was the church, and then now it's gonna be another business. You know, the impact, I mean, I already, when you come down Richmond Road and I'm watching TV, you hear boom, 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 as the trucks power down to get to the industrial area. I didn't purchase the home, I inherited the home. But it's like, wow, you know, I'm concerned that, you know, you're talking that retail, that if he decides to go retail, then you're gonna have more people coming, you're gonna have, you know, my privacy is going to be infringed upon, you know, it's just, you know, and what's gonna be, you know, what are they gonna do for that? I mean, it's a house now. Are they keeping the house? Are they going to demolish the house? Or, you know, I'm just concerned as the next door neighbor.
Thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is ask Mr. Leininger to just talk about when staff evaluated the application, sort of the analysis you went through on impacts on any neighboring properties.
Yes, so what we did is we looked at some additional landscape businesses that have gone through this process, looked at some of the conditions that the board approved for those, looked at the distance from the neighboring parcels. So you can see there's the added buffering as a condition along just the residential side that we did not ask on the southern side that butts up against M1 zone property. Another condition that we have asked is, from staff, is the operation mitigation plan. And within that condition, there are some lists in there that we have asked the applicant that come to site plan, they'll need to explain to us how they're going to mitigate those issues. So it's dust, noise, hours of operation. Another item is the impact of the roadway. Will there be mulch, mud, anything like that on the roadway? We'd be asking them to be responsible for that. That lighting in the storage yard, if they put up any light poles, the maximum height is 16 feet. They cannot be turned on all throughout the night. They must be either motion censored or the ability to turn off at end of closed business. As for the structures, with this being an A1 property, they would not be able to meet setbacks. So if they were to destroy the building or tear down the existing structures, they would have to actually move them to the rear of the property, move them past that stem, because that's where the property meets minimum lot width. That would be where the front setback would start. With them using the existing structures and not improving them or making them any larger, they can continue using those structures as they are with interior.
Thanks, Mr. Leininger. So there are a number of conditions trying to protect the surrounding properties from noise, dust, lighting, adding buffering, and that sort of thing. Are there any other members of the public who would care to make a statement?
And I was just going to add too, Mr. Chairman, you know, we're happy at the staff level to catch up with the neighbor. We'll spend some time kind of walking through the conditions that we're proposing to mitigate those visual impacts, to make sure there's no stump grinding and ensure that there's adequate buffering and screening and those types of things. So, Tom, if you wouldn't mind, we'll get you our contact information and we'll spend some extra time with you and we'll let you know when the next public hearing is going to be.
If you just come to because the microphone needs to pick up the comment.
If it goes to retail and you are going to have a nursery, because it's a landscaping business, so a lot of them go to nurseries. So then you have a nursery, then you've got trees, you know, and you've got, I mean, like I said, that's just my concern. If it does go, then it's going to be zoned commercial, and then, you know,
So at this point, the retail sales are not allowed, and in order to, if that were to go through as approved by the board, a change for that would be another public hearing, and you would get another letter and an opportunity to come out and address that concern.
But it doesn't stop them from like planting trees and stuff for the landscaping business.
No, there's going to need to be probably a bunch of supplemental landscaping planted to create that visual screen to help buffer your property.
And then after this case is heard, if you wanted to give your contact information to Mr. Leininger, he can follow up with you and just maybe explain it in any more detail that you might have questions on. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hertzler, did you want to come back?
I'm sorry to have meet one of my new neighbors in this setting. I actually very much wanted to reach out to you, but life sort of got away from me. But you know, we intend very much to be a good neighbor for the people that are next to us. You know, not only give your contact information to them, give it to me, because you know, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. You know, what are your concerns? What can we do to mitigate it? You know, how can we make this a place where you welcome us and you feel like this is going to be an addition to the neighborhood, not a subtraction to it.
Thanks, Mr. Hertz. Any other members of the public care to address this case? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it to the Planning Commission for discussion or a motion.
Quick question for staff. If Mr. Hertzler pursued a rezoning to light industrial, then all the conditions go away, right, on the SUP? No?
No. Resolution stays unless it's voided out by or changed by the board.
Okay. Then he would have the opportunity to amend them if he wanted, is that right?
Unless it becomes a by right use in the industrial district.
Right, if it was a by right use in industrial, then the SUP conditions would no longer be relevant under the A1 zoning.
Okay, great, thanks.
And remember, if it was industrial district.
Anyone else? Or a motion?
I personally think, I was just going to say, I personally think it's a good transitional use. It is going from, you know, there's Hankins Industrial Park across the way. There's the Toano Business Office Complex, whatever that is. And this is, you know, in the comp plan, light industrial. So I do think this is a good transitional use from the industrial portion of Toano moving out towards Andrews Corner. I'd be happy to.
Else?
Happy to make a motion, but I don't have the SUP number in front of me, so if you put that back up on the screen, I'll take it from there, or if somebody else would like to do it.
It can be SUP-20-0018.
Great. I would like to recommend approval of JCC SUP-20-0018, 8251 Richmond Road.
And the associated
And the
conditions. Okay, good. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. Rose.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Ms. Leverns.
Aye.
And Mr. Crop.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you all. Our final public hearing for the evening is SUP-20-0017, Williamsburg Crossing, Brewster's Real Ice Cream Amendment.
Well, tonight.
Oh, okay. Mr. Leininger.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, Caroline's Creamery, doing business as Brewster's Ice Cream, has applied for an SUP to amend a previously approved SUP conditions so that the business can build a drive-through lane adjacent to the existing building located at 5289 John Tyler Highway. The property is zoned B1 General Business, is designated mixed use on the comprehensive land use map, and is located inside the PSA. Parcel is adjacent to Route 199 that is designated an urban suburban community character corridor. SUP-0002-1993 required a 50-foot CCC buffer along Route 199 to be undisturbed and free of structures and pavement. This SUP would allow for a drive-through within the 50-foot CCC buffer and still meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. Staff is recommending conditions which are intended to mitigate the impacts on the CCC buffer. Such conditions include providing additional screening, and updating the lighting requirements for the parcel. No net loss of the buffer area is anticipated. Staff finds the proposal to be compatible with the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and surrounding development, and recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicants are here as well.
Before we get into questions, are there any disclosures on this case? Okay. Any questions for staff? Getting off easy on this one, Mr. Leininger. All right. I will open the public hearing and ask if the applicant would care to make a statement.
Hi, my name is Caroline West, Upper James City. My address is 3034 North Riverside. I'd like to thank the county planner, Brett Meadows, for assistance with this effort. I appreciate the opportunity of coming before you this evening. I am a small business owner. I own the Parcel Stop in Monticello Marketplace, and I recently purchased Brewster's Ice Cream in July of 2020. In these challenging times, small business owners are eager to find ways to sustain their revenue. Franchise data shows that Brewster's that open drive-thrus on average double their revenue. A drive-thru at this location would provide a robust way for us to serve the public in a contactless environment. It will increase our revenue and expand our job opportunities in for James City County residents. Thank you again for this opportunity and your consideration of this request.
Questions for the applicant? Thank you. Are there any members of the audience who would care to address this case? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the commission for discussion or a motion.
I think it's great that we can help somebody stay in business. So I'm all in favor.
Thank you. Else? Of the floor, would you care to make a motion?
I move that we UP 0017.
That would be with the proposed conditions? Okay. Ms. Null?
Aye.
Mr. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
And Mr. Croft?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Planning Commission considerations, I don't have any listed for this evening. And we now turn to the Planning Director's report. Mr. Holt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Nothing really additional and over what's been printed and included in your agenda packet. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Questions for? Thank you. For Planning Commission discussion and requests, just a reminder, Board of Supervisor coverage for February is Mr. Polster. And are there any other considerations or requests? Mr. O'Connor.
Just had one comment. I don't know, I did resubmit my application to serve yet again, but my current term expires at the end of the month, so this could be my last meeting. So I just wanted to pass along one thing real quick. It's a little ironic. My daughter is started her J term at UVA yesterday, and tonight, as we're in this meeting, she's in a seminar on democracy, and the guest speaker tonight is a recent Speaker of the House who recently retired for our Congress. So, but given today's events, I just thought it was ironic that she's doing that, and we just want to say thanks to everybody. This has been an enormously collegial group, always professional, and I just wanted to recognize everybody for their volunteerism and their dedication and their passion. And at the end of the day, while we may not always agree on concepts, we do walk out collegially. And I think that's hugely important, especially for our kids to see, so.
And I, for one, hope that this is not your final meeting.
My wife does.
I hadn't thought to address it, but my term also expires on January 31st. I, too, have submitted an application, but of course, we don't know how that'll turn out. Can't do it any better than Mr. O'Connor just did. I have an enormous respect for all 6 of my colleagues here and the staff. Often said democracy is not a spectator sport, and you guys live it. So thank you very much.
Mine's a little off, and I didn't want to bring it up, but the zoning issue that we just heard about doing that for industrial. If you take a look at that property and you go north, there are 2 other properties that the staff has added. Taylor Farm EO. It may be appropriate for us to expand that to this property as part of the comp plan. Once again, if you look at the map and you look at where it is, and the issue is when you can see that lake that's on there, that's the backside of the Taylor Farm. Right up from where, look at the other 2 properties that we're talking about. And so I think Tim had an excellent point about the transition piece that's there and what's available. And the guy's probably going to develop it anyhow. I mean, so why not, get it to the zoning thing, but look at it from the Tohanna to the Anderson corner and look at it in respect to what is it that we want to see there.
I could ask, if you wouldn't mind, since this is a PC working group item, in a sense, if you wouldn't mind just very briefly outlining that in an email.
I will, and what's more is I'll send in the diagrams and show you where you can see the connection of them. But really what makes sense to this thing is that barrier that CSX has that keeps anything away from the Forge Road area on that piece. Okay, and I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Well, again, Mr. Haldeman, and the same to you. Good luck on your application process, and I do agree with Jack's comments. This commission, in my opinion, is amazingly professional. Everybody brings a different skill set to the forum, and it's really true that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I do think this is it's a pleasure to be associated with all 6 of the other members of the Planning Commission, and we will see how everything.
From the other 2?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Julia and Rob?
Right, to see if they have any, so far I haven't seen anything come up on the screen if they had any comments.
Here's Julia.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Dr. Rose, Ms. Leverance, any comments? Nope. Okay. All righty. In that case, it appears that our next Planning Commission Working Group meeting is January the 20th at 4 p.m. And so may I have a motion to adjourn to that date and time? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.